Welcome back to Planning Phase Syndicate Universe Extended. Yes, folks, this is our conversation about all Star Wars, which is the most amazing thing in the world. Tonight, joining me on this episode of Universe Extended is JJ. How are you tonight, buddy?
Excited, man. I'm excited to talk some Bad Batch. It was a good episode today, or this week.
It was, yeah. We're going to be having a spoiler cast, so if you have not seen Bad Batch 3, boop, 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 head on out, because I'm not holding back. This was so far hands down my favorite episode of Bad Batch ever. Just so you know, ever in the history of Bad Batch, this one topped all of them. If you don't know what our other show is, Planning Phase Syndicate does Star Wars X-Wing miniature board game coverage. You can check us out every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, where we talk about board games, specifically X-Wing. With that being said, with the spoiler alert already being in place, let's get into Bad Batch Episode 3. JJ, why is this your favorite episode of the series so far?
Well, it's definitely my favorite episode for the season. I got to go back to rewatch the season finale of the last season and kind of compare the two. But this one was definitely very exciting here. So to start off the episode, we see this actually was an episode that didn't include the Bad Batch at all, which is actually really interesting that I recollect, other than them being in a briefing about what was going on. So essentially what the episode starts off is we see the Empire sending an Imperial officer to go into a planet that was formerly separatist, and basically informing them that the governor that's there is no longer their governor, and that the Empire is sending their appointed governor in there. And they promptly responded, hell no, and took the Imperial officer as a hostage because they did not wish to join the Empire. They wish to remain independent, which now triggers the Empire to respond by sending a team of clones to being led by Commander Cody, a man that we have not seen since, episode 3, correct? That would have been the last time we have seen him?
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
Yeah. So Commander Cody lost his yellow gear. He's now in the standard white Stormtrooper armor, and has to now go into this capital to essentially capture or liberate the Imperial officer and take over that particular planet for the Empire. And we get to see that the defenses for this is basically reactivated battle droids, a whole battle droid army that's holding that particular capital and defending it from the Empire.
Yeah, so I have a couple of notes here. One, I'm very, very excited we got to see separatist equipment being used here. Like, that just tickles the Star Wars guy in me. I don't know. That's one of my favorite, absolute favorite things ever. I also enjoy battle droids because they're just ridiculously silly, and it's just the Roger Rogers of everything. And like, maybe we should rename the show Roger Roger. There you go. We'll just call everything Roger Roger. Roger Roger. I don't know. So like that piece of it was extremely inviting. I will say, yes, it was a little weird not having a lot of Bad Batch character development this episode, but I feel because we had, in my opinion, the first two episodes felt like filler and didn't feel like a big cohesive story, which maybe we're going to get something more this season than we've had before. But like, I was not brought into this with the first two episodes, but this episode harkens back all the way, into Clone Wars, right? And that's where we have Cody. What happened to Cody? Did he defect? Did he not defect? And we get to see Cody essentially perform actions normally like any other stormtrooper. Yeah, it's weird he lost his yellow equipment, but I think that's kind of standard for how the Empire runs things, right? Um, but being able to bring one of the most beloved characters back to the show is just huge. Now I'm going to caveat this with saying the one thing I do not like, after I said a good thing, the one thing I do not like if this becomes a Cody redemption arc that they just sacrifice him at the end, I'm going to feel that's very shallow Fabroni. Like that's just, to me, that's kind of a shallow take. But if we get, on a positive side, if we get a lot more Cody and we get to see what happens with all these stormtrooper clones that, essentially did Order 66 and now have to suffer the repercussions of it, and how they don't understand or can't understand the complexity piece of that, because obviously it was a program chip that triggered this, that I'm on board for. I just don't need this redemption arc. I don't need it. I don't like Star Wars redemption arcs. I just don't like it. I think it's like, I don't know, faux pas, I guess. Is that the word you would say? Maybe that's not the right word, but I just, I have a hard time with redemption arcs because that's not a normal piece of life. Like, you're like, we haven't seen Trump all of a sudden come back and have this redemption arc where he's like, sorry guys, I was a little bit wrong with being my racist statements. Therefore, hey, come here and I'm sorry. Let's talk real politics and be more neutral. We're not seeing those are not real life things. And Star Wars sometimes plays to that a little bit more than I care for, I guess.
Okay. So, so we see Crosshair talk with. No, it's all right. So I'm just trying to remember how the episode evolved from there. So we do see the Crosshair returning from his injury. Apparently, he was actually stuck 35 rotations on Camino after the events of season 1. Which I'm trying to think like how long that is in actual time. That would have been like a month, right? Or at least over a month.
Yeah, at least over a month. At least over a month. Yeah, I think you're pushing 3 or 4 months there, but
like that's a long time for that dude to survive on what? What was he drinking? What was he eating? Like during that whole time? I mean, rations can only get you so far, right? But apparently he was out on medical leave for a little bit, just recovering from the events at the end of season 1, and now is assigned under Cody to go on this mission to take out this installation here. And we get a whole sequence of battle here for very, very reminiscent of Clone Wars, where we get an Imperial ship, precursor to Lambda, going in with some troops, and it gets shot down by the Separatist forces there. And then begins the whole battle sequence where they go in and infiltrate the location. And probably one of the best shots I've seen was Crosshair baiting a LAAT tank to shoot at him to get the other clones in. Yeah. And then he bullseyes the barrel of the tank to explode the round that's in there and make it explode. Highly unlikely or probable that would ever happen, but it was very cool.
It's like he has a force. Somehow he has a force, right?
It's his magic eye, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. That's a little silly, I will, and think about, like, you saw the shots coming from that tank. We're so close to him. It's like, I don't know. Like, I mean, a little bit closer, he'd be dead. Like it feels like Jedi crap. Some of it feels a little bit Jedi-ish. So I don't know.
I mean, battle droids just suck at shooting, honestly.
Battle droid. That's fair. That is fair though. They are really, really bad. I don't know. It is a 30-minute show, right? So I understand the logic and why they did it the way they did it. Again, Andor is just so much better at some of that stuff than Bad Batch has been. But the silliness of it, like, also, like, I was sitting there like, oh, he's just gonna shoot the inside of a tank. Oh, what a miracle. But if we think about it, if you think about how the Force works, like technically speaking, it's not just Jedi's only, right? Like that's not how the Force actually works. Like the whole midichlorian argument is, I don't know, rather silly. And they've kind of gone on to define the Force as not something that's unique only to Jedi, that it exists outside of this. Other people can use certain facets of it. And so like it does kind of make sense that you take a very skilled individual who has spent, I don't know, its very short existence honing one specific skill plus the modded tech. I could see how they get away with it, right? Again, it's a little silly, but I do see it. And if you think about it, Clone Wars, right? Like if you go back to Clone Wars, and we honestly think about Clone Wars, how many times did the Republic get a bunch of crazy BS that happened against Separatists? And like, remember the stupid or not not the octopus, the spider guy. I can't remember his name. What's the spider guy's name? The general spider guy.
Trell. Or
yes.
Krell.
Yeah. That guy needs to be an X-Wing, first off. That 100%. And
yes.
Trench. Yes, Trench. Thank you. Thank you, Deslin. Yeah. That guy, like if you go back to like all those scenes where like all of a sudden he gets all pissed off because like somebody slaughtered like 100, battle droids, and you're like, what the hell? How does that happen? In normal war, that would not happen. But it does in Star Wars world. So like I don't see this as a very offbeat thing, especially for that character. But I think it's a learning experience for Cody and the rest of the team where they're like, well, we got to trust this outsider. And then, we're trusting this outsider, and we get to the end, which we'll talk about in a minute. But you get to this outsider is like doing things that are earning people's trust, and he's just going to burn it all. He's just going to burn the whole thing to the ground. But I think the separatist piece of it was very unique. Like seeing that there was another piece of resistance coming towards the Empire, even from people that were allies of the Empire before the Empire became a thing, is very interesting to me, because I think that mimics more of real world experiences. Like we were on board with this, but hold on, now you want to dominate us and alleviate, like our competition. Like, hold on, we supported you because we didn't believe in the larger cause, but like that pure anarchy piece of it like is now failing them because the Empire is like got this iron fist. And you can see the downfall of the Empire because the Empire sent 2 clones as leaders and like some troopers. They didn't send like where the fuck was the Star Destroyer that just showed up over the world and just decided either you comply or we blow you up? Where's that? That's the Empire I know,
Well, I mean, to be fair, right? When Crosshair is having this conversation with the Imperial officer that assigned him to the mission, they basically didn't care about this world. They didn't care about it until they actually just took over or took out the they took captive the Imperial officer that they originally assigned there. So they essentially just sent that shuttle just to mimic, like under the guise that they were going in with a diplomatic solution, where their solution was actually just wipe everybody out so that way you can win the argument. So I think that's why they did that specifically.
Yeah. And I really think that this kind of develops some of the, we had Andor, and again, I get whatever, this is spoiler cast. We had Andor, and Andor essentially kind of was saying, hey, look at the Empire in its infancy and how it failed at certain things but excelled at other things. I think that comes into play here, right? They went to conquer and put efforts into a world that really is probably meaningless to them in the long run. And it's more of a pride thing. And,
exactly.
As we move through this episode, we all of a sudden get to see essentially the clones prevail. Even though there is whatever those roly tank droids are called. I don't know what they're called. Droidecas, which is another really cool name. Why do the Separatists have all the good names? JJ, I don't know. General Grievous, Droidecas, Battle. I don't know. Seems they seem better than everybody else. Kraken. They got Kraken. I don't know. seems pretty. Kalani's a pretty good name. Anyway, um, so we see them struggle. And the funny part is, how many times did Cody see Anakin or Obi-Wan or Ahsoka do something crazy with these stupid fucking rolly droids and nobody knows what to do with them? They're like, oh my god, they're taking out all these clone troopers. But it's like, you all saw that they just rolled thermal detonators underneath the shields, which is so illogical. It's not even funny. But now all of a sudden they're struggling with these same droids. Like it's just, I don't know. It's silly to me.
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, to be fair, right? It's like, there was a point where Crosshair uh, puts I guess like a detonator on a regular battle droid, then shoots the same battle droid so that way it could slowly fall into the droid deca, and then the explosion happens inside of the shields. So those shields can only stop fast projectiles, but not the slow ones
Yeah.
or slow moving objects.
Well, what game is play? Oh, it's shuffleboard, right? Shuffleboard, where you just want to slowly move the thing down the other thing.
The slow roll, yeah. Yeah, that was pretty good. But and so after finally when they make it to the end up there and they make it to the Imperial Governor, Cody encounters one of the senators that was on the Separatist side that attempted to actually broker a peace treaty during the Clone Wars, along with Padme and Minimi Bonteri, and had originally brokered for peace for the galaxy. And Cody makes the promise that they're there for peace and to do this, only to immediately have the Imperial officer order her execution, and he hesitates and she immediately gets shot from Crosshair, completing that particular job. And it's and right before she's executed, she says, "So much for peace," and she looks at him because she's accepted her fate. She knows what's going to happen. And I think that's the moment right there where Cody realizes, right, he questions his whole purpose now, right? Because he asks Crosshair, has the Empire made the galaxy a better place, right? And he says that with a heavy tone, especially when they just had a conversation about more and more clone troopers going AWOL, missing from action. And then we find out later on that episode that he himself has gone missing in action. He's gone AWOL. And now Crosshair has been sent on another mission. And that's where we end the episode there. So after everything happens there, in my opinion, I think that we're slowly getting led to a clone rebellion, where this is going to lead to the Empire finally just getting rid of all clones across the board and just using standard stormtroopers. What do you think?
I actually kind of agree with you on that, right? Like I do think, it makes sense because it's an unaddressed conversation in the Star Wars universe, and I think so. When we talk about, I have a little bit more affinity to this series than I do to a lot of other series, right? And a lot of it's because, so in the 70s, the original trilogy came out, right? I wasn't alive. They reprinted it when I was in my, early teens, and I enjoyed it. I got to see them all in the theater. And that was great. And then, the new prequels came out, and they were, they were not a great showing, but there was so much, unkept, what I would call unkept story. Like when you create a magnum opus, and I guess I'll divert a little bit because I'm a big Stephen King fan, and his magnum opus is The Dark Tower, right? And there's all this content that filters in and around The Dark Tower. Star Wars had a harder time, I believe, in my opinion, before the early 2000s, bringing all that together. Yeah, great. There's a bunch of legacy type stuff that exists, but I don't feel they were all as cohesive as they are now. And I feel Clone Wars was the first attempt at that. And my kids watched it, and I watched it a little bit when they were growing up, and I liked it. And My son and I went back and rewatched it during COVID, the whole thing, and I re-fell in love with that whole piece. I re-fell in love with Rebels. Like that whole, there's a whole story to tell about the rebellion that we don't get. Like we get a very PC version of the rebellion with Han, Lando, and Luke, right? You know, or Han, Leia, and Luke. It's very, you know, washed, I would say. And then we get into Andor, and Andor has given us this amazing like backstory where we feel like deeply invested in the characters. I feel Clone Wars was like that, and I feel Bad Batch gives us a very familiar feel, even if they don't execute. I will say as good as Clone Wars did or Rebels. They are giving this backstory of these clones that self-realize themselves. And I'm going to go back to the last season of the Clone Wars when you go to the episode where Ahsoka and Rex escape. I very rarely cry at cartoons. That was one of those moments. You have Rex and Ahsoka escaping. They're fighting Maul. They're getting shot at because of Order 66. Everybody's turning on them. They don't know what to do. They get out, and they're burying their brethren who are killing them. They buried the people that were shooting at them. That does not happen very often in war. And I feel this is one of those times where when the Bad Batch can come in and they're now giving us even more of a taste into, you know, what that is. So the long way around this and all the way back to the discussion of, is this a clone rebellion? I 100% believe it is, and I 100% hope that this is the story arc that takes us into season 3. Because Cody was such a beloved character, and I hate redemption stories. I do. I genuinely think redemption stories are garbage, and they don't really have a big place in my opinion, in universes. But in this case, in the case where we have clones being forced to do things specifically that they were not programmed to do, A, and B, that they did not want to do, and C, that basically they had their memory wiped to do this, to all of a sudden come to self-realization very quickly, we would say. Like, I mean, what is this, 6 months, 7 months after the disaster? Yeah. That's big. And I hope Cody dies. I'm just going to say it. My prediction is before the end of season 3, Cody dies. And I guess this is a kid's show, so maybe this won't happen. But to me, that's one of the largest things that could happen is Cody gets to give his life to say, hey, yeah, I made some mistakes. I want to know what Jedis he killed, and then I want him to go out. I want it to be a big bang of glory for him. Because I think one of the repressed things that we do not get in a lot of these different arcs is this, what happens to all the troopers we loved, and what happens to all these people that do genuinely have a moral conscience. Because you can't tell me that all these troopers just sat around and like did Order 66, came to their senses, and were like, oh, we're okay with this, and oh, the Empire is the best thing ever. That doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I don't know. He gives us lights for Crosshair. That would be crazy, but I would agree with that. That would be fine because that would be Cody at his best. I don't know.
Yeah.
Long story short, I agree with you, JJ. This is the Clone Rebellion on the rise.
Now, going back to Crosshair, because it seemed like this conversation that he was having with Crosshair doesn't outright dismiss him. He actually looks like he's actually considering the words that he's saying. Do we see possibly a change in Crosshair?
I hope not. I'm going to say I hope not, because we didn't see a change last season. He was presented with a change, man, and he didn't do it. He rejected it. He went all in on saying, F you guys are wrong.
Well, he also had, 32 rotations out at sea to think about it too.
So. All right. that is definitely fair.
He's the one non-force character, that remained alive not because of his sheer will to stay alive after being stabbed in the stomach. I mean, come on.
That is true. That is true. That dude lives forever, doesn't he? That dude does not want to die.
Turns out he was in the Battle of Endor too, and we didn't know.
That is true.
That great.
All right. Well, I don't know. Anything else you have before we move on?
I know that's it. I'm just excited to see what else they're going to do with the season here. The first two episodes were okay. This was definitely a big step up from the first two episodes. Just love the sequences and how they animated that whole battle sequence. It's actually one of the best things I've seen so far. Particularly with the aiming disc that Crosshair was using. Just put it on a wall and then it just bounces the shot. I mean, man, if that's a reason to ban trick shot and X-Wing, I don't know what else it is.
Yeah, you're killing me. Well, don't ban it before the end of this tournament. Yeah, I don't know. I agree with you. I really hope we do not get a Crosshair redemption arc. Unless it, nope, I don't want a redemption arc from him because I don't know. I don't feel he's on board with any of this, and I feel like he's just one of those people that is just like, no, I'm going to do whatever pays me the most. He's like a true bounty hunter, right? He trained Fennec Shade. All right, that's fair. Maybe he trained Fennec Shade. Is that why she's badass and she's the only good character in the Book of Boba? Maybe that's why.
No, she probably loses her eye and then has his eyes implanted into her face.
Ooh, that's a great one.
Right.
I'll take that.
That's terrible writing.
I don't know. I think to me, if we have to rate these episodes, like to me, this was 10 out of 10. This was hands down. I'll say hands down. This is my favorite episode out of the whole series, both seasons.
Okay.
Like seriously, I genuinely loved this episode. Even if it was a little bit more of an offshoot from everything else. And I don't know. Again, maybe it's my nostalgia of wanting to fill in the blanks with between the areas. And you know, I will tell you I don't like this episode more than I like Andor. But I will say, when we had a conversation last week and you were like, well, hey, remember episode 1 and 2 of Andor were really slow. All right. Like I'll grant you that. I will grant you that's if next week is amazing, then you have my vote that JJ was right. I will say it on stream. JJ was right, not about the Giants, but only about Bad Batch. Giants are still going to lose in the playoffs. But I don't know. Like I feel there's new life they got invigorated into the series from this episode.
Yeah.
And this episode has given us a lot of good episodes. The series has given us some good episodes.
Yeah, definitely.
But I really feel this one is top tier, over a lot of other things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, all right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us on this Universe Extended. We will be back next week with our normal podcast, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, as long as JJ doesn't wimp out. And after that, we will be doing our Universe Extended on episode 4 of The Bad Batch. If you like all of this and you want to support the show, you can follow, subscribe, whatever floats your boat on all of the different YouTube, Twitch apps that we have. You can join our Discord. We can have commentary, and you can be a part of the show. With that, thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you next week with more Planning Phase Syndicate.
See ya.